The loyalty of Ruth, a love that changed history. Prologue, an extraordinary tale from ancient times. Human history is not short of examples of loyalty, but some stories are so powerful that they not only survive the dust of time, but become a beacon of light for every generation. One such story is that of Ruth, recorded in the Old Testament of the Bible. This is not merely the story of a woman. It is a masterpiece depicting loyalty, sacrifice, love, and faith. A story that changed not only the destiny of one family, but also opened a new path for the spiritual family of all humanity. The story of Ruth takes place approximately 3,000 years ago, during the time of the Judges. This was an era when the Israelites had no permanent king and were led by judges appointed by God. It was a period marked by great turmoil, lawlessness, and moral decay. In such a context, the example of faith and loyalty shown by a foreign woman was a clear message from God. Ruth's story teaches us that true loyalty is not limited to mere words or formal promises. It is a deep and pure love that is willing to make any sacrifice. It is a loyalty that forges an unbreakable bond not only between people, but also between a person and their Creator. Chapter 1. The beginning of troubles and a decisive journey. Famine in Israel. The story begins when a severe famine struck the region of Judah in the town of Bethlehem. Bethlehem literally means house of bread, but it was now experiencing a dire shortage of it. During this time, a man named Elimelech, which means my God is king, migrated to the land of Moab with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. Moab was a region east of Israel, and its people were considered enemies of the Israelites. Elimelech's decision to take his family to Moab was not merely a geographical change, but also a spiritual test. God had given the Israelites clear instructions not to associate closely or intermarry with the Moabites, because when the Israelites were coming out of Egypt, the Moabites had not helped them but had instead plotted against them. Tragic events in Moab. Elimelech's family lived in Moab peacefully for some time, but then tragic events began to unfold. First, the family's patriarch Elimelech died. Naomi was left a widow, and the responsibility for the family fell to her 2 sons. As time passed, the 2 sons married Moabite women. Mahlon married Ruth, and Chilion married Orpah. For 10 years the family lived in Moab. Naomi lived a pleasant life with her sons and daughters-in-law, but then another calamity struck. Both of Naomi's sons also died. Now Naomi was left utterly helpless. She had no male provider, no children, and she was not in her homeland. She was alone and vulnerable in a foreign country. The decision to return. It was during this time that Naomi received news that the famine in Bethlehem had ended, and God had once again provided bread for his people. Naomi decided to return to her homeland. She told her 2 Moabite daughters-in-law to return to their parents' homes. Naomi reasoned with them that it was better for them to go back because she was now old, had no more sons to marry them, and could not provide new husbands for them. Upon hearing this, both daughters-in-law wept. They insisted they would not leave Naomi. They both genuinely loved her, but Naomi persuaded them that staying with her would only bring them hardship and poverty. Eventually, Orpah made the difficult decision to kiss her mother-in-law goodbye and return to her family. Ruth's historic decision. But Ruth made a different choice. She decided to stay with her mother-in-law. Naomi urged her to follow Orpah, but the response Ruth gave became one of the most beautiful examples of loyalty in history. Ruth said to Naomi, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go I will go, and where you stay I will stay. Your people will be my people and your God my God. Where you die I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me." Ruth 1:16-17. These words are not just about a daughter-in-law's loyalty to her mother-in-law. They are a declaration of a person's unbreakable bond with their Creator. Ruth had not only chosen to stay with Naomi, but had also chosen Naomi's God as her own. This was a Moabite woman declaring her faith in the God of Israel. The return and facing a bitter reality. Finally, Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem. When they entered the town, the whole community was stirred by their arrival. People were astonished, asking, "Can this be Naomi?" Naomi, filled with grief and bitterness, responded to them. "Don't call me Naomi pleasant," she told them. "Call me Mara bitter, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." Ruth 1:20-21. Naomi was expressing her deep sorrow and despair. She believed God was against her, which was why these tragedies had befallen her. But she did not know that God had an astonishing plan for her life, and at the center of that plan was her loyal daughter-in-law, Ruth. Chapter 2. Work in the Fields and a Special Encounter. The time of harvest. Naomi and Ruth arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Jewish law had a specific provision for the poor called gleaning. Landowners were commanded not to harvest the edges of their fields nor to pick up any grain that fell to the ground. This was to be left for the poor and the foreigners. Ruth asked Naomi for permission to go to the fields to glean behind anyone who would show her kindness. As fate, or divine providence, would have it, Ruth found herself working in a field belonging to a wealthy man named Boaz, who, unknown to her, was a relative of Naomi's late husband. Ruth worked diligently behind the harvesters, gathering what they left behind. Boaz's arrival and meeting with Ruth. When Boaz arrived at his field, he noticed Ruth and asked his foreman who she was. The foreman explained that she was the Moabite woman who had returned with Naomi. He commended her hard work, mentioning that she had been working steadily since early morning with only a short rest. Boaz went directly to Ruth and told her to stay in his fields and follow along behind his servant girls. He assured her of his protection, warning the young men not to touch her, and telling her to drink from the water jars his men had filled whenever she was thirsty. This was extraordinarily kind treatment for the time, especially towards a foreign woman from a despised nation. Boaz had already heard of Ruth's loyalty, how she had left her homeland and her gods to care for her mother-in-law and serve the God of Israel. A blessing and an invitation. Ruth bowed down in gratitude and asked Boaz why he was showing such kindness to a foreigner. Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Ruth 2:11-12. Boaz not only acknowledged her human loyalty, but also recognized her spiritual decision to seek refuge under the wings of the God of Israel. He prayed that God would fully reward her for her actions. An invitation to eat, an extraordinary kindness. At mealtime, Boaz invited Ruth to eat with him and his workers. He offered her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied and even had some left over. After the meal, Boaz instructed his men to deliberately pull out some stalks of barley from the bundles and leave them for her to glean. By the end of the day, Ruth had gathered about an ephah of barley, approximately 13-15 kilograms or 30 pounds, an exceptionally large amount for a single day of gleaning. Return to Naomi and joy. When Ruth returned home and showed Naomi her bounty and the leftover food, Naomi was amazed. She asked whose field Ruth had worked in. When Ruth mentioned the name Boaz, Naomi's sorrow turned to joy. She immediately recognized him as a close relative, a gal, a kinsman-redeemer in their family. "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She added, "That man is our close relative. He is one of our kinsman-redeemers." Ruth 2:20. Naomi advised Ruth to continue working in Boaz's fields, where she would be safe and provided for. Ruth followed this advice and worked there through the barley and wheat harvests. Chapter 3. A bold proposal and a request for redemption. Naomi's wise plan. As the harvest season was ending, Naomi knew it was time to secure a permanent future for Ruth. She devised a bold plan. She instructed Ruth to bathe, put on perfume, and wear her best clothes. Then she was to go down to the thrashing floor where Boaz would be winnowing barley and spending the night. Naomi told Ruth to wait until Boaz had finished eating and drinking and had lain down to sleep. Then she was to uncover his feet, lie down there, and wait for him to tell her what to do. This action was a culturally recognized, though courageous, way for a widow to ask her kinsman-redeemer to fulfill his duty and marry her. It was a risky move. If Boaz rejected her request, Ruth could face public shame and humiliation. But Naomi trusted Boaz's character to treat Ruth with respect. Ruth's obedience. Ruth obeyed her mother-in-law without question. She went to the thrashing floor and did everything exactly as Naomi had instructed. In the middle of the night, Boaz was startled awake and discovered a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. Ruth replied, "I am your servant Ruth," she said. "Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman-redeemer." Ruth 3:9. These words were the formal language of the request. Ruth had not only identified herself, but had reminded Boaz of his familial and legal responsibility. Boaz's honorable response. Boaz responded with profound kindness and respect. He said, "The Lord bless you, my daughter," he replied. "This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character." Ruth 3:10-11. Boaz praised Ruth's virtue and noble character. He promised to do everything she asked. However, he informed her of one complication. There was another kinsman-redeemer who was a closer relative than he was. This man had the first right to redeem the land and marry Ruth. Boaz promised to settle the matter first thing in the morning. He ensured her safety, letting her sleep at his feet until morning but sending her away before daylight to protect her reputation. As a gesture of his goodwill and provision, he also gave her a generous gift of 6 measures of barley to take back to Naomi. Return to Naomi and the wait. Ruth returned to Naomi before dawn and told her everything that had happened. Naomi, confident in Boaz's integrity, reassured Ruth, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Ruth 3:18. Chapter 4. The Act of Redemption and a Joyful Ending. The decision at the city gate. True to his word, Boaz went to the city gate that very day, the place where legal and business matters were settled. When the closer relative passed by, Boaz called him over and also gathered 10 elders of the city to serve as official witnesses. Boaz presented the situation to the relative. Naomi was selling a piece of land that had belonged to her husband, Elimelech. As the closest relative, he had the first right to buy it. The man immediately agreed to redeem the land. The condition of marrying Ruth. But then Boaz added the crucial condition. On the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabite, you acquire the dead man's widow in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property. Ruth 4:5. Upon hearing this, the relative's enthusiasm vanished. He declined, saying, "Then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it." Ruth 4:6. He was likely concerned that marrying Ruth and potentially having a son with her would complicate the inheritance of his own existing estate. To formalize his refusal, the man took off his sandal and gave it to Boaz, a legal custom of the time to validate the transfer of rights and responsibilities. Boaz's public declaration. Before the witnesses, Boaz made his declaration. Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses. Ruth 4:9-10. The elders and all the people at the gate proclaimed themselves witnesses. They then blessed Boaz and his future wife with a powerful prayer. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. Ruth 4:11-12. This blessing was profoundly significant, linking Ruth's future offspring to the great matriarchs Rachel and Leah, and to the line of Judah, from which the Messiah was promised to come. Marriage and a son. Boaz married Ruth, and the Lord blessed them with a son whom they named Obed, meaning servant or worshipper. The women of the town celebrated with Naomi, declaring, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman-redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Ruth 4:14-15. Naomi took the child in her arms and became his caregiver. This child, Obed, would grow up to become the father of Jesse, who was the father of King David. Epilogue: the legacy of loyalty. The story of Ruth's loyalty is far more than a historical account. It is a timeless lesson. Her loyalty to her family, her word, and her God transcended cultural barriers and personal cost. Her story is a cornerstone in biblical history. The Book of Ruth demonstrates that God's grace extends beyond nationalities to all who faithfully seek him. Most importantly, Ruth, the foreigner, became the great-grandmother of King David and is listed in the genealogy of Jesus Christ, Matthew 1:5. Her legacy of loyalty was woven directly into the lineage of the Messiah, changing the course of history forever. Her words, "Your people will be my people and your God my God," echo through centuries as a powerful testament to the transformative power of faithful, covenantal love.